Sometime.
Never.
You're watching Public Affairs. Berkowitz is my name, and politics is our game, and we will be doing politics this evening because we have as our guest State Representative Lou Lang, who is now in his 22nd year in the General Assembly. He knows a lot about politics. He knows a lot about public policy. There's a lot going on. Barack Obama, Illinois' homegrown U.S. Senator now, former colleague of our guest Lou Lang, at least in the General Assembly, the different chambers. Of course, Barack Obama was there from 96 to 04. He was elected in 96. So for 8 years, their terms overlapped in the General Assembly. We'll want to get the insights of our guest, State Rep. Lou Lang, who represents a portion of the city of Chicago, a portion of the suburbs. More about that later, but it's really the northwest suburbs, well, Skokie and Lincolnwood and Morton Grove, or at least parts thereof, and the 50th Ward, parts of the 49th Ward. So he's got a good feel for what's going on in the state of Illinois. And more about our guest as we get into the show, but let's do that right now. People are talking, we're taping the show on March 23rd. People will be watching this in the week of the 24th, and in the city just a week later. People are talking about nationally, is Barack Obama, this is an interesting question because nobody was asking it until the last few weeks, I think. Is Barack Obama credible? Is he credible on what he says about Tony Resco? And perhaps even more importantly, is he credible about what he says about Pastor Jeremiah Wright? His pastor, I guess, for almost the last 2 decades, married Barack and Michelle, baptized his 2 young daughters, somebody who he presumably knows reasonably well. He's borrowed a slogan, I think, when he wrote the book, Audacity of Hope. I think he says that came from, and he didn't steal it, he didn't plagiarize it, he gave credit to Jeremiah Wright. So, we ask you that. State Representative Lou Lang, you know Barack Obama, you've known him at least for 8 years, and you're overlapping the General Assembly, you're a leader in the Democratic Party, so you know him in that context. Is Barack Obama credible about Jeremiah Wright, about Tony Resco?
I think very credible. First, we have a whole slew of politicians who won't come forward when there's a controversy or an issue involving them. Happens all the time. Here, the governor of the state of Illinois and the former governor of the state of Illinois, people reach out to them about issues, about controversies, about problems. They don't want to talk about it. Barack always takes the bull by the horns. Barack has a public issue, he wants to talk about it. So he came to the Chicago Tribune and Chicago Sun-Times, spent a significant amount of time with them talking about the issues involving his relationship with Tony Resco. Told them everything they wanted to know, answered every question, and most editorials gave him good marks for not only coming forward and being forthright and honest, but in addition, putting it behind him. This issue about Jeremiah Wright is a tough one. If you listen to the very impassioned and very unfortunate comments of Reverend Wright, what you find is that a lot of people were angry. Barack was angry, and Barack decided to use that time to make a major pronouncement about the problems of race in this country. And
before we get to the speech, as people are referring to it these days, when you say a lot of people are angry, Barack Obama was angry, who was angry, and what were they angry about?
Well, they were angry about the incendiary comments.
Which were?
Some unfortunate comments about the United States of America, some unfortunate comments about people that live in the United States of America.
The unfortunate comments included the suggestion or statement or assertion that the U.S. government was trying to give black people AIDS as a means of genocide, something to that effect?
Well, he may have said that. I didn't hear those things. I chose not to listen to every word that's been on YouTube, et cetera, et cetera. I heard enough, and what I heard I did not like. I'm happy that Barack stepped forward and condemned the comments. I'm happy that he stepped forward and said, I don't believe these things, and then went into a commentary about...
And I'll say one more thing. The suggestion or implication that September 11th, 2001 was perhaps deserved by the state, by America. This is what Pastor Wright suggested, because he said we've been doing all sorts of terrible things around the world. Now, as he said, that famous phrase, the chickens were coming home to roost.
Right. Well, he should not have said those things. Whether he believes them or not, he should not have said them. They are beyond unfortunate. They're horrible. They should be condemned and have been condemned by every quarter. Barack did so as well.
But he did so when? When it came out, when people were seeing these tapes being played on their television sets in the last 2 or 3 weeks.
But we don't know,
But
Jeff.
we know some of those comments I mentioned about the chickens coming home to roost on September 11th were obviously soon after September 11th, so 6 or 7 years old.
But we don't know what Barack said at that moment in that church when those comments were made. What's important today...
But he continued to go to the church, we know that.
Yes, but...
He continued to refer to his pastor as Jeremiah Wright. He continued to refer to him in approving ways when he's borrowing his phrases.
I think it's fair to say that we all go to different churches and synagogues, and we don't always agree with our clergymen. I don't always agree with my rabbi. Barack Obama doesn't always agree with his pastor. I'm sure everyone listening and watching this show today doesn't agree with their clergyman every day.
But when would you walk out? If you heard something in your synagogue or somebody heard it in the church, there must be some things that are so offensive, it's not a matter of you disagree. Your statement is you walk out, you disassociate yourself. If you're a member of a country club that discriminates against women because of their gender, discriminates against African Americans because of their race, we expect people who are members of this country club learn of that discrimination. If they do, they disassociate themselves.
Actually, we expect people who care about those issues not to join those country clubs in the first
place.
Right,
we expect them not to join, but if they do.
This is a long
But he's
standing.
joining. This is the analogy here. He's joined the church. He learned of this. He said that to the Sun-Times and the Tribune. That was a new statement. First he said he hadn't heard those comments. He told them that he did hear of at least a number of comments that were controversial. And he didn't disassociate himself. That's the point.
I would submit to you that staying at this church at this time, after the speech Barack made last week, discussing race in this country, is more of a red herring relative to the presidential campaign than anything else. I can't imagine somebody following Barack Obama's career, following this campaign, and listening to his remarks about race last week, who would still say, well, he hasn't left that church. I can't vote for him because he hasn't left that church. If you listen to his comments, you can draw no other conclusion than he's on the right side of these issues. Now, there may be people out there that say, well, if it was up to me, I would have left that church. But I don't think you know unless you're in that situation, unless you're a person who has been a member of that church for many years, who has a personal relationship with that person. Perhaps we're better off having Barack be a member of that church so we can continue to work with Pastor Wright and try to, A, tone down his rhetoric, and B, make him understand where the black-white divide in this country emanates from, and maybe work with him and maybe use that church as a core focus to make a real difference in the community.
But the question that comes up is, you know, Barack Obama, through much of the campaign, when people have questioned, especially people like Hillary Clinton, have questioned his experience, he questioned her judgment. That's what he's been touting, the judgment of Barack Obama. Maybe he's been in the U.S. Senate less time than Hillary Clinton. Maybe he wasn't in the White House as she was for 8 years. But he claims he had better judgment. He goes to the war vote, which maybe we'll get to. She voted to authorize taking military action in Iraq in 2002. At least that was her vote in 2002. He stood out, said on this show in November of 2002 he would have voted no, not to authorize that military action. So, and he made his speech about that. So it's pretty public. He says that was his judgment, and he has better judgment over Hillary Clinton. But people are saying now, but what kind of judgment was it on your part, Barack Obama, to be in that church and not speak out in 2002, to not do what you said, try to